welcome everybody to our software overview of Sage Intacct for Education. Really do appreciate you giving up an hour of your valuable time. So I hope you find the session valuable. Over the years, there haven't been massive change in finance systems options available for multi-academy trusts and schools until perhaps more recently. So from speaking to so many MAT CFOs, MAT finance team members, there still seems to be a lot of frustration out there with suppliers missing key areas of functionality, providing poor levels of support, trusts or schools being hit with rising costs or hidden costs to adopt the DfE chart of accounts as an example, or if you do need to add a school, it can cost you thousands of pounds in implementation fees. And generally, some providers don't always seem willing to move with the times to develop their solutions. So like you, I'm sure you've sat through many other finance system providers demonstrations. And I can confidently say that Sage Intacct for Education is really going to offer you something different. And to quote my rather sort of cheesy strapline, which I use far too often, we'll say that Sage Intacct for Education is the future of MAT finance. Just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So a quick intro to ION. So first off, it's great to have the best-in-class solution for your trust or your school, but then it's also very important to have the right team behind you. So I'll give you a bit of background of who ION are. We're also going to start looking at the system. So first off, dashboards and reports. So this is one of my favorite parts of the software. So in Sage Intacct for Education, you have real-time, auto-consolidating, fully drillable, role-related dashboards or activity-related dashboards. So no static data, no analytics that you can't really drill into and interrogate. And within our fully customizable dashboards, you can really create that environment it's going to allow you to work more effectively, no matter what your role is in the trusts or the schools. Kevin's also going to take you through consolidation as well. So Sage Intacct for Education adopts that one pot of data, one database approach. So the system automatically consolidates. You don't have to drop data to Excel or log in and out of different schools. So as perhaps the CFO or the central finance team, we're always going to give you that top level view with the ability to go into the individual schools and open multiple tabs of the system as well. So we're able to do that because Sage Intacct for Education is a true cloud solution. So not cloud-based, no servers, no logging into apps, and certainly no hosting costs. So 100% browser-based. We're also going to take you through the purchase to pay process as well. So this process can be completely customizable depending on your trust structure, your permissions, your delegation model. So you can achieve that completely paperless approach if you wanted, or even perhaps a hybrid of that. We can also look at our budgets and spend insights. So this is a great feature in Sage Intacct for Education that gives requisitioners, budget holders, the visibility of their budget in terms of what's been spent, what is available before that submission. So that cuts out a lot of back and forth, and it just ensures that you're ensuring there's decent spend control and management there. And then we've got a Q&A at the end, but throughout this demonstration, please pop in any questions you might have, and then we can get them covered at the end. Just so in terms of who ION are, so based in Newcastle, not far from Sage headquarters itself, we are a Sage partner. So this means we resell Sage Intacct for Education on Sage's behalf. So should you move over to our solution, your contract will be with ION. We will build your system, we will train you, and we'll support you on a day-to-day basis. ION, we've been selected by Sage to lead on the go-to-market strategy for Sage Intacct for Education because of our experience in the sector. So there's 30 of us. So our 30-strong team is made up of MAT finance specialists, MAT implementation experts, education consultants, and accountants. And I'll say probably approximately 30% of the team are ex-Sage who have worked on and delivered hundreds of days of implementation projects for schools and trusts. We've also provided thousands of hours of support to schools and trusts as well. I will add, because I'm conscious we may have some 50 clients or Sage 200 clients on today's webinar, that how we deliver that support and implementation is very different to how it was done at Sage, because at Ion we have a proven SaaS delivery methodology, which we call the Ion Way. Now that many steps to it, but it just ensures that the system is delivered to you on time with minimal disruption, and it's fully bespoke to the needs of your school or your trust. And then finally, just in terms of where this proposition is, we've got very ambitious plans to make it the default choice for CFOs at multi-academy trusts and schools. So it's important to say that Sage Intacct for Education will work with you, not only in your current context, but as you evolve as well. So the system facilitates growth with ease. So I am also aware that we do have some individual schools on today's webinar. So Sage Intacct for Education offers huge benefits for schools or single academy trusts with plans for growth. So if you are using perhaps Sage 50, 200, Capture FMS or a local authority mandated solution, that's fine. We're moving schools from these solutions as well. And just in terms of our existing client base, we've got trusts that are using the system that are fully centralized, part centralized, or even fully decentralized. So the system will support you no matter what your journey looks like. As a business, we've enjoyed some really excellent growth over the last 6 months. So we onboarded 20 trusts across 300 schools. And as part of the process, we're happy for you to speak to any one of our trusts to firstly to understand why they made the move away from other system providers. And they'll also give you an honest appraisal of how the system is working for them and how Ion have supported them on the journey as well. And what I'm going to do is I'll also share my details in the chat. So if you would like perhaps an informal discussion after or later in the week, I can take you through some indicative commercials, give you a steer on project timelines and answer any questions that you may want to know. And that essentially is me done. So hopefully that will give you an overview of what we're going to cover today, a bit of information on Ion. Kevin, when you're ready, if I'd like to hand over to you, and if you'd like to take everyone through the system.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to be taking you through Sage Intacct for Education. I think Stephen did allude to this. There was a mixture of kind of trusts on the score, whether they're multi-academy trust, single academy trust, but I think there's even some private schools that I can see. I recognise some of the names I've even spoken to, I think some of you before in the past. So yeah, the software Sage Intacct for Education isn't tailored just to a specific vertical within that. So it's not just for maths, it's not just for single academy trust, it's not just for private schools or colleges or nurseries. It can be adapted to work with all of those different verticals within education. So today you'll see my particular demonstration environment, which is the Ion Academy Trust, is set up for a 5-school mat. So you can see there straight away from the entity picker, from the drop down, we have the Ion Academy Trust itself, Derwentdale, Swaledale, Teviotdale, Craigside and Cloverdale. So we've got 5 different schools within the trust. Before we get into the dashboards that you can see in the background of the screen there, and before we start talking about consolidation, I do want to very briefly explain, because again, I know I have spoken to a few of you before, and some of you, I think, even from when I was at Sage directly. So I did work at Sage for 7-8 years or so. I started off on Sage 50, then worked with Sage 200 for education, and now I'm with the team at Ion. So I do recognise a few names, as I say. So I just want to explain that Sage Intacct is fairly new to the UK. Sage acquired it back in 2017, and it's very much now the flagship product for Sage. So they're putting a lot of their time and investment behind the development of Sage Intacct, and the education sector being the main vertical at the moment. So it's nothing like Sage 50. It's nothing like Sage 200. You won't have seen anything like this particular Sage system before. And the main place to start with that is, and you will know straight away what I mean, is this is browser-based software. So there's no more installation of the product. You don't have to have a server. You don't have to install an app. There's absolutely no installation at all required from the trust or from your IT teams, so they will love it. To give an example of that, with Sage 200, when I used to work with that product, one of the first trusts I ever went to see, one of the school business managers brought their Mac to the session, and straight away we couldn't install the Sage 200 app onto the Mac. So that was straight away a bit of a frustration with Sage 200. Although it is hosted and you can access it remotely, it isn't a true cloud-based system or a true browser-based product like what Sage Intacct is. So as you can see, I'm just in Google Chrome, and you can access the system from home, from the office, from a coffee shop, wherever you might be. You can get it on your phone, on a tablet. You will be able to access your information. So straight away, you can see some of the benefits there. Once you do get logged in to the system, to Sage Intacct for Education, you'll have your own user profile set up where you can begin to set your preferences that are individual to you. You might not have full access to the system like I have. So I'm logged in as an administrator of the system, so I can see every single screen and every single button, and most importantly, every single school within the trust. So I've got access to everything. Again, a great benefit of Sage Intacct is that ability, and I'll show you some of this in a moment, is the ability to restrict users so they can only see individual schools or groups of schools. And again, I'm going to make a direct comparison here to Sage 200, where a bit of the big issue with that was sometimes if you're in a single database, you couldn't restrict that user access to individual schools if you were in one single database. If you're in a multiple database setup of Sage 200, you couldn't consolidate. So there was a downside either way. Whereas with this, it combines the best of both worlds. So we're able to have every school within the trust set up, but you do get to individually work at school or academy level. So I can have Swaledale open, I could have Derwentdale open because I've got access to it. In fact, I can have every single academy open in the browser at the same time. And again, that comes in very handy if you want to restrict individual users or requisitioners or head teachers or whoever they might be, whoever it is that needs to access this software, whether it's for purchasing purposes or approval or just read-only access, whatever that might be, you can be given access to just one or multiple schools without seeing everything from a top-level perspective. So they don't need to be given access to the top level, which is your umbrella view, but absolutely everything within the system, which, as you can imagine, the main advantage of that is you can consolidate at the top level. So if you have that level of access with your user profile, you're able to see the top level, and that opens up the door to then be able to produce this type of information. So the head of finance dashboard that you can see on the screen there at the moment, I will explain, is for this demo environment. I've created this head of finance dashboard, and the word create being the key one there. You can create as many dashboards as you like. There are no limits on that. So to give you a little bit of an idea, we've got an annual accounts return dashboard, a budget holder dashboard, a CFO, a month-end dashboard, a requisitioner dashboard, but you can also get individual named dashboards if you prefer to go down that route, where we can set up any number of different dashboard screens to be able to suit the users within your trust that are going to be accessing the software. So no limit, you can do it yourself if you want to, or Ion can support in the creation of those dashboards during the implementation. But if I run my dashboard again from the top level, it will automatically consolidate all of the schools within the trust without me needing to run any sort of consolidation process at all. So just a good way of visualizing that, if I click my filter, you can see this particular dashboard has been filtered to show the trust, all entities within the group. But I could choose to filter that down and show only primary schools or only show secondary schools, different clusters if I wanted to do that. Or I could pick and choose individual schools from the filter. If even though I'm at the top level, I still might want to filter down and choose to just report on individual schools. Again, another alternative to that is I could just go into the Swaledale Academy entity itself within the environment, and I could navigate to the same dashboard. And again, now the information is only giving me the Swaledale Academy and any sub-locations under that. Okay, so it gives you the ability to have that best of both worlds approach where we can work individually within the schools or academies or via the top level. Once we have filtered the dashboard down per school or academy or group. We can also choose to filter down by cost center. Okay, so again, we'll discuss this with you. We know that a lot of trusts or a lot of schools or colleges or they'll all have different cost centers, different ways of reporting on departments or faculties, whatever that might be. So again, your list of cost centers might look quite different to mine, but again, we'll go through that setup process with you. But again, the idea is you can filter to break the dashboard down by that cost center or department. Once we've done that, the information is then displayed for the relevant filters. And I think Stephen alluded to this during his introduction. Still drillable information on the dashboard. So everything you can see here, all of the different KPIs, so account balances, budget information, student data, which I'll come back to. We've captured the number of students within the trust. We've got educational supply spend. All of those numbers, all of those key performance indicators can be drilled into to show you the data behind the scenes. Now, a lot of dashboards that I've seen in other systems and even with other Sage products is they can look fantastic and they can give you all of the kind of the high level insights, but that ability to just click onto the number and see what that £610 is that was spent as of March 2022. I can see the breakdown. I can drill into that again. And then I can continue to drill into the detail that is driving that particular number. And you can see it was a YPO invoices for £200. And again, I can view the actual copy of the invoice. So fully drillable. Bad example, because there is an attachment on this one, but you'll be able to view any attachments that are applicable to that particular transaction as well, directly from the dashboard. Okay, so everything that you see, whether that's a graph or a chart, again, we can click into that and it will load up the information behind the scenes. So for maths, the curriculum material spend of £400, again, drill into that. So that's a huge benefit of again, not just being able to give your budget holders or head teachers or finance managers or whoever you are, whatever your role is, not just giving them the numbers, but giving them their breakdown so they can see what they've spent their budget on. Okay, they can actually interrogate the data to a certain level. Now, you're not going to want to give head teachers or budget holders or requisitioners everything that you see here. Again, that's going to be restricted. You're not going to want them to be able to see balance sheets and things like that, which again comes down to the customization available within Sage Intacct to set those dashboards up in the way that you want. If we scroll down again, you can see some examples of different reports that we've got. A good way, I think, of visualizing the consolidation that is automatic is just to run this trust consolidation income and expenditure report for the entire trust directly from the dashboard, and it will bring up that report for me. So again, I know I've mentioned this already, but you don't need to do anything in order to make that happen. So because of the environment and the fact that all of the schools and academies within the trust exist, you just need to run the report from the top level and it will give you that consolidated picture. So it gives you a side-by-side breakdown with a total at the right-hand side there of all of the schools grouped together for the different DFE account group structures that you might have put in place on the left-hand side for the income and expenditure. So again, just this automatic consolidation via the cloud directly on a dashboard. So straight away you can see there's huge differences to some of the other products that are out there within the education sector. Just to go through next a little bit more about dashboards, because I think you often assume or kind of associate a dashboard with reporting and analytics and graphs and charts and colors and things like that, which is the majority of what you can see here on this particular dashboard. But you can also use the dashboards functionally within the software as well. So if I'm a budget holder or a person who might need to actually approve transactions within the trust, you can do that and perform those tasks again directly from the dashboard. So if I was able to, if I had the permission and if my role was set up to be able to do that and not click it too many times, you would be able to go through and approve those purchasing transactions directly from the dashboard screen. Okay, a couple of other examples of that. Or if I wanted to create a month-end dashboard, so talking about using the dashboards functionally, this doesn't have to be any, I mean, I know I've got a balance sheet on there, but you don't actually have to have any reports or any kind of numbers or graphs or charts on here. You could simply use this to make sure you performed every task that you need to for month-end. Now, that could be by creating checklists, or simply by putting the month-end tasks that you know you need to perform. So, for example, if I click the bank rec link, that takes me into my bank reconciliation screen where I can begin to reconcile the bank directly from the dashboard. So again, they can be used functionally as well as for reporting and analytics. There's a really good few uses of the dashboards. And again, just to stress, we will go through with you the best practices around setting up these dashboards, and we'll either create them for you or we'll teach you and show you how you can create the dashboard yourself. And if we do need to support you, so if you need help from Ion directly, I'm just going to navigate quickly back to my other dashboards here. So if you do need to contact Ion, and again, I think Stephen did a great job of summarizing the team at Ion and our experience that we have and how we differ from some of the other products that you'll see out there on the market. Is Ion only specialize in education, or we've got an education specific team that you can contact at any time. Okay, give us a call, send us an email, submit a case, or even start a live chat. And I think the biggest benefit there is you're going to get directly through to the team that actually implemented the product for you. They actually supported you during the testing. They delivered the training for you. So you're going to get directly through to that team and not be passed from pillar to post, maybe speaking to different people. You'll come right through to the team that was worked with you already. Okay, that's just about enough now for dashboards. Again, if there are any questions at all throughout the session, I think Stephen mentioned, please pop them in the chat, or we can wait until the end. But just because there's a lot to cover and I've not got too much more time, I'm going to just move on slightly now, and we're going to cover off a slightly different use or benefit of having this top level environment approach. So we call it a multi-entity shared environment where you can have all of your schools or nurseries or whatever, again, however this will work for you. You have everything built into that one environment. And what it means is everything is configured and set up within the system just once. And this is particularly important, I think, for those on the call today, on the session today, who've been through the pain of having to add a new school into their existing software that they use, again, whether that's H200 or PSF or whatever that would be. Adding a new school, we know for certain setups can be very painful and very time consuming. Thinking of Sage 200 mainly there. But with Sage Intacct, because of the way we have this set up, your accounts payable application will be set up and configured once at the top level with one list of suppliers. The same as your general ledger will be set up with just one list of general ledger accounts, or the chart of accounts will be set up just the once bit. Again, whether you're using the DFE format or whether you've got your own chart of accounts, it doesn't matter. You just need to have it once. It's set up and configured, and everything is all created and managed and controlled via the top level. Again, another good example that we're going to go through shortly is the purchasing workflow. So once that is set up with all of the approval policies and the different nuances that you might have with relation to purchasing, we set it up once and we don't need to touch that again. We can amend it and tweak it and change settings if we want to, but when we bring a new school in, we don't need to re-implement accounts payable. We don't need to do anything other than simply navigate into the list of schools or entities, click add, and fill in some simple boxes. So there's 4 or 5 boxes there to fill in. Specify the name of the new school, choose the tax solution, and click save. And you would have a brand new school within your environment that you can then begin to use moving forward. Okay, incredibly easy and straightforward to grow and scale with this product. Okay, again, whether you're a MAT or a group of nurseries, again, there's different kind of scenarios that we've come across here. But if you're growing and scaling regularly, this product will really help you on that journey. Okay, so I hope, again, unless there's any questions, you understand that kind of top level approach and what it offers with the system and how it can automatically consolidate and help you scale and grow very easily. Once you can understand that, and if you don't, please let me know. It really opens up the door to a lot of the other functionality within the system. Okay, so what we're going to look at next, which can be, it's funny because I've just been discussing this with a trust who's just recently began their implementation process, and all they wanted to talk about was purchasing. They didn't really want to speak about anything else because the purchasing workflow is crucial, okay, to them and the way that they work. And it's a big bugbear, a big complicated process at the moment. It might be paper-based, or there's emails flying around. There's just complicated, time-consuming processes when it comes to somebody within one of your schools who needs to buy something for their department. That can be a very time-consuming and frustrating process. But with Sage Intacct, again, unlike other products that I've worked with before in the past, Sage Intacct offers the ability to have a personalized workflow for your particular organization. Again, whether you're a MAT or a private school, you can have your own workflow here. So if you want to, which not every kind of school with, or every trust within education wants to do, not everybody wants to start a requisition. Most of them do. But if you don't want to start a requisition and you want to just go from purchase order, you absolutely can. Okay, we can put different steps, different workflow settings in between this workflow to make it really work for you. Again, another good example here is if you don't want to go through the goods received process, which I know, again, Sage 200 would force you to do, you don't have to. So you can go directly from order to invoice if that's going to suit your trust. So again, the key point there is that it's flexible, customizable, or configurable, whatever word it is that you use to describe that. We'll set it up in the way that you need it to work. Again, another good way kind of visualizing that workflow is by using the visual on screen there. So requisition, to order, receive a shipment, and then create a purchase invoice on the back of that. Every single workflow, every single step within the workflow, can be approved by the relevant department manager or finance team member who, again, will build that approval process in for you. So if it's over a certain value, it needs to be approved by the head teacher or by a finance person. So again, we'll really get into the detail of that for you. But just to take you through this particular workflow that I've got set up, will be quite quick. Again, a bit of an eye on the clock here. I don't want to go into too much detail within this session, but I could, using my profile, go in here and raise a brand new requisition. If I wanted to, I could do that. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take you through that process with another user who I've got open on my other tab there, called John Smith, who's only been given access to be a requisitioner. And again, I'm not going to go through every setting here, but just to quickly show you how that would look. As an administrator or as a central team, or again, if you've got control over the system, you will set up your users. We just take a quick look at John Smith's kind of user profile here. He's an employee user. So he's not a full user. He can't do everything that the finance team can. He's just an employee user. No admin privileges whatsoever. The role we've allocated to John is a purchase requisitioner. And we've actually restricted John so he can only see Swaledale Academy. And he can only see the PE cost centre within there. So you've got full control over what that user can see and do. Okay, so with the John Smith login, we're going to raise the requisition. With my account, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to play the budget holder in the scenario. So I'm going to be the PE cost center or budget holder. Okay, so I'm going to be the approver. So swap back to John. Again, I've mentioned, going back over things we've already mentioned, the dashboards can be changed and completely tailored. So your requisitioner dashboard doesn't have to look anything like this. It could be completely different, but there's a few things to point out that could be useful. The ability to have communication and conversations across the trust. So we can use a tool here called Collaborate, where I can have fictional conversations with John Smith, who doesn't really exist, but I can have conversations with him and and ask him to add attachments to documents and things like that. So we can use that. You'll get another view of this in a moment, but it's a really good tool to be able to communicate, whether you're a budget holder communicating with the requisitioner or the finance team communicating with the head teacher. It's really, really useful. As long as you have access to the system in some capacity, you'll be able to use the Collaborate tool. But just to go ahead and raise a new requisition, and it's as simple as a couple of clicks from the dashboard, and that takes you into the new requisition window where we can begin to populate the form. Now, again, remember, this is on a web browser. This is true cloud technology. So this could be, again, done at home, done on an iPad, it might be a bit difficult to do it on a phone with it being a bit smaller, but you could if you wanted to do this via a mobile device or an iPad. But again, if we go ahead, I'm going to choose YPO. you'll have a lot longer list of suppliers than I have in your environment. But if I just use YPO as an example, I can pop in some messaging here. So we'll just say we need it ASAP. The deliver to contact is populated. Now, the attachment field, you can drag and drop into there. You can search and browse your PC for that attachment. So again, if I've already got that attachment available, I can go ahead and just say I'm going to add purchase attachment, and I can have that within the field. Or again, as I've mentioned, you can drag and drop from an email, or drag and drop from, if you use two screens, you can drag and drop into that attachment box. We can put certain validation in to ensure that the requisitioner has attached that. Again, or we can put in rules here. We've come across this with certain multi-academy trusts where they've said if the value of the requisition is over £5,000, they need to attach 3 quotes. Okay, so we can do that. We can put rules and policies directly into the system that will almost enforce that for you. Once we've added the attachments and the messages and everything else, we've specified the delivery address. We can then go ahead and specify what it is that we're looking to order. Now, again, we'll discuss this with you. There's a couple of options around how we'll set up the item list that your requisitioners will be picking from, or your purchase order team will be picking from. I've loaded in a catalog. Okay, so I can actually search that catalog for what I'm looking for. So for example, I could pick an iPad from the catalog, or we can keep this a bit more straightforward and specify something like curriculum materials. Okay, so if they specify that, they can then go in and they can free text into the item description exactly what it is that they're looking to buy. But the curriculum materials item will be linked up to the relevant nominal code or general ledger account within the system in the background. In this example, though, I am going to choose the iPad. So I'm just going to say we're going to order an iPad, which pulls through that description. Remember, John is restricted, so he can only see the cost center, which is PE. And he can only choose from the Swaledale Academy. Now, an interesting point here is Swaledale Academy actually has some sub-locations, so that might be relevant to your organisation, where if you have a large campus that might have different locations within that, you could do that. You could choose to set this up. So we've got Swaledale Academy, but then there's some sub-locations there. But again, just to keep it simple, I'm going to choose Swaledale. The price is automatically pulled through for me, and I could now go ahead and submit this requisition through to the budget holder or to the head teacher or whoever that will be that is responsible for this particular requisition. Sage Intacct in the background is already beginning to validate what this requisition or what this the impact of this requisition would be on the budget. And it can do that by using the Spend Insight tool. And this is crucial. This is one of the moments when I first started using this particular software that I thought, you know, this is the game changer. This is where it starts to differ from some of the other products out there, because with a single click, we're getting for PE, for Swaledale Academy, for the curriculum materials general ledger account, we can see what's in the budget, what we've actually spent so far, and how much we've got committed. Okay, so with one single click of a button, the system has validated for me that combination, and it's giving me, now, maybe not as a requisitioner, that might not be too useful. In fact, we could hide that away from the requisitioner, but from a budget holder's perspective, so if we're looking to make sure that we're not going to go overspend, that ability to just click one button and get all of that information, which again is drillable, get all of that information. It's not drillable. Actually, that's a good way to visualize, because John, as the requisitioner, hasn't got access. This is a perfect way of viewing that. Saying he's not authorized, he doesn't have access to view the kind of the breakdown there. The budget holder will have the access to be able to do that. But again, the number is drillable. Now, you might have noticed when we clicked into the Spend Insight that I am actually over budget. So what will happen, if I try to submit this, the system is going to give me an automatic warning message to say that we've gone over budget, so this transaction exceeds the budget limit. Okay, I'm going to choose to submit anyway, just to progress with the actual workflow, but it is allowing me to do that. It could give me an error instead of a warning, so that's optional. So rather than a warning message, it could give me a block, just an error saying, no, we can't even submit this. But again, I'm going to go ahead and choose to do that anyway. So I'm going to submit that through. So it's in a submitted state. I will get an email notification through to tell me now, as the budget holder, that we've got a new requisition to approve. just to swap back in now to the budget holder dashboard. I'm going to go into my list of transactions now. You can see John Smith, purchase requisition number 187, and it's a requisition there for today's date. So I can go in and view that. Again, as the budget holder, so I'm able to click into that, and it will give me the full breakdown of everything that's been submitted through as part of that. And again, most crucially, show me the spend insight tool where I can say, wait a minute, we're over budget here. I'm not going to approve this, but you can then see why. We drill into those invoices and what actually makes up the particular spend within that month or within that period. I mentioned the Collaborate tool before when we were looking at the dashboard. And again, I think this is a really useful tool. And I know a lot of the trust that we've got on board with Sage Intacct Education at the moment will use this, where they could at each other. Now, again, this is a scenario where I've got the budget holder who's adding the requisitioner there. They're going to say, look, John, we're over budget. Maybe we can't do this. Try again in a few months. We might have some more on the budget or something. We can send that message to them, and then we could choose to decline the requisition. Or it could be simply, look, I'm going to decline this, but please can you add another attachment, or please can you change something? Okay, and we can send that message directly through to that user using the Collaborate tool. So very useful. Okay, I'm just going to approve this for now because again, I'm looking at the clock and I'm going to run out of time. So I'm going to leave that there. So I've approved the requisition. And again, just with a bit of because I'm up against the clock here, quite quickly here, can convert that requisition into a purchase order. Once the purchase order is populated, which doesn't need to be approved now, the purchase order is pulled through everything from the requisition. Get everything that we've already put through. The purchase order is ready to be posted. And then we can send again, it's giving me the message there about the warning for the budget. But once you've posted the purchase order, we're then able to go ahead and email that directly out to the supplier from the system. So it will go directly out to that supplier, who will then obviously receive the PO, or again, or not. If you choose not to send the PO, you can place that order via the supplier's website or whatever would need to happen there in that scenario. Ultimately, though, when we receive the iPad or we've received whatever it is that was placed on the order, we can then progress the workflow to GRN or through directly to a purchase invoice. And again, just for purposes of time, I'm going to go straight to the purchase invoice, pop in the document number and any tax information that we might need to populate there. So again, we can go through and we can populate that in there. So again, you've got the ability then to go in and specify on the invoice and make sure that that matches up to what the invoice actually shows. So again, it's quite quick. And again, I just want to make sure we get enough time to show you some of the reports that we have within the software. But that was the purchasing workflow done quite quickly there from requisition through to purchase invoice. And again, I welcome any questions that might come through on that if there are any, because again, we can adapt that. Okay. Depending on whether your trust has a central bank or a bank in each school, again, we've got that covered. There's a couple of different options we can do. So if we need to make that payment run, so once the invoices have all been processed, via the accounts payable application, we can generate a purchase payment run from the top level if we've got a central bank account, which will pull through for every single school within the trust. Or we could choose to do that payment run within each of the individual schools or entities that you have set up within the environment. Okay, so the payment run can be either all centralized or ran individually. We can send automatic payment notifications out to the suppliers during the payment run process. So once everything's been approved and authorized and you've produced your BACS payment file that you'll upload to the bank, the system will send an automatic email remittance directly to the supplier during this process. So again, there's lots of things going on. Obviously, I'm aware that I'm skipping over slightly now some of the areas of the system. But again, I'm giving you enough of a flavour today to show you what's possible. What we'll finish on for the next 5 minutes or so is I just want to talk to you a bit about the reporting, because again, as well as purchasing, consolidation, reporting is another huge bugbear of the trust that we've spoken to before, and the ability to produce a set of management accounts or your ESFA, DFE reports that you need to produce. We've got that all covered. So if part of the annual accounts return, we know you need to submit. We know you need to submit benchmarking, BFR. We know you need to do the counterparty. Okay, so we've built in a lot of those reports for you, and you can produce that information. We are actually working directly with the DFE at the moment. So our developer is in discussions with them to automate the submission of the annual accounts return directly through from the software. So again, that should be coming fairly soon. But again, all of the reports that you can see here within the product are going to be available to you. So whether that's a forecasting report for cash flow, income and expenditure, budget versus actual reports, again, you'll get every single one of these reports as standard with the actual implementation. Okay, so all of the reports there now. So again, as I said, we'll give you all of these reports as part of the implementation. You'll most likely want to tweak and tailor them and customize them to your specific needs, which again, we'll take you through and show you how to do that. But ultimately, once you're happy, you can create something called a report group, which will bring all of the reports together. So I've got a management report pack here created as an example, which contains a budget versus actual report, consolidation, statement of cash flow, and a balance sheet. Again, if we want to run all of those reports together with a single click, we can do that. Okay, and we can then go ahead and view the stored report and get that out into Excel with just a few clicks of a button. So that management pack will come directly into Excel or PDF or whatever pack it is. And again, we can then send that out so you can see each of those reports is run automatically within the Excel document there. Okay, so some really, really handy ways of being able to produce a lot of information, a lot of reports that you need to produce to bundle it together, and then we can email that out, or we can even schedule that report pack to send out as part of a pack, so we can send the report pack automatically when we've closed down the general ledger or we've closed the books within the system. I'm going to leave you on one thing before we open this up for some questions, which I'm hoping we're going to get quite a few. Just to talk quickly, again, this is probably more aimed to everybody really, but I know there's a few users who've currently been working with Sage 200 and the limitations that are there with the report designer and the frustrations of being able to design reports in there. Now, just to quickly visualize how good and how much better Sage Intacct for Education is for report writing, I'm just going to show you an example of a very basic report for income and expenditure. So it's consolidated, it's running at the top level, and it's still a really useful report, but it's very summarized and quite basic. Okay, so we've got a report showing us all of the income and expenditure for the trust, and it's broken out into the year-to-date column there. So just one single column on this report. But if I wanted to edit that information, or edit the report, sorry, I can use the financial report writer. So straight away, you can see a huge difference here in how this looks versus the other Sage products out there, or I'm sure if you're on PSF or on another system, you can see straight away some of the differences that are there. It's very easy and user friendly, I think, to be able to use. It's broken out in a very, very straightforward way. So we can apply different filters to the reports. If I want to say, look, don't just run for Swalesdale Academy, I actually want to run this for the entire trust. We can save that filter so that it will happen every single time. The biggest change, or what I'm going to show you today anyway, there's so much potential with it, but it's the ability to get more insightful information out of a report that already exists. So again, we've just looked at one there before, which was nice and summarized for year to date, and it had the breakdown of the chart of accounts. But let's just say now I would like to see that information broken out by cost center or department. If I want to break it out by location or school trip using the project dimension. So we can break out this information and expand it in a few different ways. So if I pick locations, set that, I'm going to preview. Remember, this is the exact same report we've just been looking at a second ago. So it's still the same income and expenditure report, but now what it's going to do is it will expand that report across the page and give me a side-by-side view, again, similar to what we were looking at earlier. But again, I just wanted to show you and get across how straightforward and how easy it is to be able to make those changes. Again, similarly, if I wanted to add a budget, so I'm not going to expand the column, but if I want to add budget information now, so look, I've designed a really good report and it's very insightful, it's really useful, but it's only showing me actuals. So I want to now go ahead and show budget information. So add another column, pick the budget or the forecast that you've got already available within the system. Okay, choose the financial time period that we're going to report on. So I'll just say fiscal current year to date. We'll preview the report again, and again now you're going to get that actual column, but right next to it you've now got the school budget. And again, I could go ahead and add additional budgets or variance columns to that as well. But really, what I was wanting to do here as part of that little session was show you how easy and straightforward that is to do within the system. I hope there's going to be some questions coming through, so I'm expecting there will be. Yeah, I was going to say, so I'm going to pass it back to you, Stephen, there now, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. Got some good questions here. So if we just get stuck into those, and if you do have any questions whilst we're just getting these questions answered, just pop them in the chat. So first one was from Charles, where he's saying, what data or information can you bring through from Capita Sims? And I asked what information would you need? And they're talking around fees and debtors information and debt chasing.
Okay, so the API is fully open. So depending on what system it is that you're using for whatever purpose, could be MIS or a payroll system, or we've come across all sorts of different systems that would be used within the education sector. So the API or the import facilities within the system are really, really strong. So you're able to go ahead and import or use the API to bring across information automatically. But just to focus quickly on the debt chasing question, there is the functionality also within the system to set up chasing letters and automatic processes to be able to send out those types of things for credit control purposes. So Sage Intacct comes fully equipped with all of that. But I think, Stephen, maybe need to look at that question. I might be able to go back to it in terms of what we're actually looking for there, and if it's an integration or if it's an import. But
it is, yeah. I mean, I think just to touch on the Sims link and the iSAMS link, yes, we do have an open API to get those integrations going. When I was obviously at Sage, I pushed very hard to get the iSAMS link with 200, as you know. So obviously 200 currently does have that link. But since then, obviously, I think Iris acquired iSAMS. So yeah, will they have an appetite to perhaps get that integration going with iSAMS? I'd have to pick that up, but certainly got an open API that allows obviously our system to integrate with third-party providers. Currently having a conversation with Arbor and integration company called Wand, who will obviously be able to assist with that, where we can integrate with all different types of MIS. Lisa mentioned about, obviously, can she have a visit to a trust to see it in action, which 100%, yeah, we can arrange that for you, Lisa. Nina answered about, can you view prior year data once moved over?
Great question, Nina. So if you import it and bring in the prior year data, then you absolutely would be able to. But it's for me all around what data can we bring in, what system are you using already, in terms of that process, because again, there's a few questions that we could get into there. Are you currently using the DFE chart of accounts? Because if you are, that might be quite easy then to migrate some balances over for prior years. If you're not, though, if you're going to move chart of accounts from your existing codes to the new DFE codes, that process can be very, very time consuming. So the answer to that question is, if you import monthly kind of net movements from the prior year to update your financial position at the end of each month, then you would absolutely be able to run that and produce that type of report. But again, we find a lot of trust, depending on what the scenario is of what system they're moving from, they might choose to not do that. So again, it really depends on the scenario. But again, I'm happy to pick that up in more detail with you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kev. And then Numa mentioned, I think this is when you're on the dashboards, you're saying, can this dashboard report be extracted in Excel for further analysis?
Yeah, so you can export it out quite easily. Again, if it's a report, if it's a dashboard, if it's a whatever that would be, again, it depends on if it's just the dashboard in its entirety. Again, we might be able to go through a process there to get that into an Excel format. But if it was a report, if I just again bring up that report, the budget report here on the dashboard, I can click the Excel button at the top of the page and it will drop it into Excel with a single click there. So it's dropped that report into Excel from the dashboard, which I can then begin to interrogate further. So yeah, the drop to Excel button is available there. within the system, depending on what it is that you're looking to analyse.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, Kev. And I think when you were going through the requisition process, I think it's a budget holder, Nina had the question, can you make the spend insight box compulsory if they have already overspent and they cannot add the PO?
Yeah, absolutely. So the spend insight, when you click into it, it's really handy at giving you that breakdown for how much you spent the budget, and it gives the budget holders the breakdown. If we hid that from view and it wasn't there, the requisitioner wouldn't be able to see it, but the rule will still validate in the background around if the requisition or the purchase order was going to take you over budget, it would still validate and stop or warn. Stop probably being what you're asking for there, so making it compulsory. So if they've already overspent, they can't add the PO. So the stop rule could be put in place there to prevent anybody even submitting something through that's going to take them over budget.
Okay. Thanks, Kev. And Mrs. Jeffrey asked the cost of the new system. Obviously, there's something I can field. So we've got a very straightforward pricing structure. So it's based on number of schools and number of users. So what I can do, Mrs. Jeffrey, if you'd like to just drop me an email with your number of schools, perhaps the number of users required, and I can put a bespoke, some indicative cost together for you on that. Paula Hill asked the question, can you have authorization at the point of inputting an invoice and ignoring the requisition and PO stage?
Yes, absolutely. It's a nice straightforward answer. So every stage of the workflow, whether you're a requisition, purchase order, again, remember I said at the beginning of the workflow, we can build that out. And if you only need to have an invoice in here without anything else before that, we could apply an approval policy directly to the purchase invoice stage rather than going through everything else. So absolutely, yes.
Brilliant. Mrs. Jeffrey also asked, does it work with IMP? Absolutely. So obviously I come from IMP myself, and that was one of the first things we looked at and put on the development roadmap. So just being sort of trialed at a number of our trusts. So we very much see this, this finance system is the best in class finance system with, arguably the best in class map budgeting tool. So you'll be able to move your actuals into IMP and then send your budget information back. So yes. And then, sorry, just going down. And then also Anuba mentioned the same thing really. Does it work with SBS budgeting? And can that be linked and uploaded our budget? So we don't have that seamless integration with SBS at this moment. So it would involve like a manual import into the budget repository that sits inside Sage Intacct for Education. But again, I do have a call with Richard Page, Head of Development at SBS, to obviously move towards that, seamless integration. We acknowledge they've also, do a lot of good stuff in the multi-academy trust and school space. So I just scroll down. Andy has asked, are you able to put authorizing limits on purchase orders, requisitions that certain authorizers are able to authorize?
Yes, I'm just looking through that question there now. It's a good question, Andy. So certainly, absolutely, every stage of the workflow can have what we tend to find is have like a cost center level approval where the manager of that department or cost center or head, again, whether it's a primary school, could be the head teacher, they will look at that and they'll make the initial approval. But if it's over a certain value, that will need to then be sent for approval for somebody else. So again, and if it's over a certain value again, it might need to be 2-3 people involved within that approval policy. So yeah, we can have both monetary value based approval, but we can have the still kind of the cost center or department manager approval process as well. So
brilliant.
Very flexible.
Anuba's got a question. I think this was when you were going through the reporting part of the system. Are you saying it can produce management accounts automatically in Excel?
So the management accounts, Anuba, will be created directly within the system itself. So if you've got your income, expenditure, balance sheet, cash flow, what you name it, whatever you need as part of your management accounts, we'll have all of those reports set up within Sage Intacct, pulling all of the information through from the system around budgets and forecasts and actual values. So pull all of the reports together for you and automatically bring them into a pack. If you choose to drop that pack into Excel, then that's absolutely fine. You can do that. If you don't want to, if you want to just PDF that or just keep it within the system completely and add it to a dashboard, you've got options when it comes to that. But the system, Sage Intacct, will produce the management accounts what you then do with that and how you present that and what format is up to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think I know the answer to this one, but we will cover it. So does that include actual versus budget comparison?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Anuba, very big question for Anuba here. So can we upload hundreds of journals in one go via a CSV upload, not manually typing, as they need to post prepayments and accruals manually once calculated?
So a couple of questions in one there. So the answer is simply to the hundreds of journals, yes. Very straightforward. Again, where there's a CSV import file that you would populate with all of the different lines of your journal, and you can import. I think the maximum you can do in one go is 5,000. That's in one go. But you can then prepare another 5,000 if you wanted to do that separately. I don't know why you'd be doing more than 5,000 journals at one go, but you never know. But yes, you absolutely can do hundreds without a problem whatsoever. You can choose to import them and sit and kind of wait for the import process to finish, or you can import offline as well. So if you wanted to run the import, do it offline in the background and continue on with something else, then you can do that also.
Brilliant.
For prepayments, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the next question, Stephen, in advance. So the next question, sorry, Stephen, to post prepayments and accruals manually once calculated. So you can absolutely post journals in the system for your prepayments and accruals, but the system actually has some really handy functionality for prepayments that you can allocate directly to the invoice itself. So when you're processing your invoices, I'll just quickly show you a glimpse of this. There's a prepaid expense class that you can associate with every invoice that is applicable for a prepayment. Once I specify the class, I can then specify the start date. The system in the background will generate a prepaid expense schedule. Okay, and that will automatically post a journal in the background of this to prepay that particular invoice. Okay, so there might be something that would even prevent you needing to import the journal in that scenario. Okay, I think some of the PSF systems already have similar functionality to that, but I know with Stage 200, if that's what you're moving from or looking to move from, they don't. So yeah, automatic prepayments based on the invoice data.
Brilliant. Just go back up. So can you set up your own chart of accounts, or do you have to use the DFE codes? And that's from Miss Dobson.
Yeah, so it's completely up to you. An easy answer to that. The DFE chart of accounts, if you're a multi-academy trust, is probably recommended because, again, we're going to be building in the automatic submission and everything for you. But it's entirely up to you. If you don't want to choose to go down the DFE chart of accounts route, so again, if you're private school or college or nursery or something like that, then you're not going to want to use that. So you can have your own chart of accounts.
Yeah. Angela has asked, can it deal with each school having its own profit and loss, but the balance sheet just being at trust level?
Okay, so I think I understand that question. It might seem like a simple one, or it did initially when I read that, but I'm not sure maybe if you're getting it something else. So if you are, please let me know and send the chat. But you can produce reports within each academy or school within the system. So if I wanted to go to Swaledale, for example, and run a profit and loss or an income and expenditure report, I can absolutely do that just within the Swaledale Academy entity. If I wanted to run my income expenditure profit and loss, it will give me that for that specific academy within there, and it will only show me that. If I wanted to then run a balance sheet at the top level or within the trust, again, I could do that. Okay, so it's up to you. It depends on where you're running the report from. So you can have individual profit and loss or income and expenditures, or even balance sheets around within each of the individual schools, but then pick up everything and run a balance sheet at the top level. That'll pull it all through. So I'm hoping I've answered that question. Please let me know if I'm missing something there.
Great, thank you, Kev. Nina mentions, in regards to POs, can you have 2 to 3 levels of authorizers and then different approval limits? Because we mentioned one level, but for the example, they've got 2 to 3 levels, e.g. line manager approval, and then budget holder, and then head if it's a large amount.
Yeah, so I think, Nina, we just kind of answered this a little moment ago there. So it's a similar type of question. So the approval policies are very flexible. So again, in the first instance, you'd usually want a budget holder or a department kind of budget holder manager approval initially. But then again, if it's larger amounts or different monetary values, you want those approvals to be diverted off to different to different users depending on their roles. So again, it's all down to the permissions and the roles and who's got the permission to approve certain levels of transactions. So again, absolutely, is a simple answer to that question.
Okay. Angela's asked, how did the reports come out? PDF, Excel, HTML?
Again, I think we've covered. So again, or either of those, PDF, Excel, CSV, run it within the browser itself if you want to. So there's lots of different formats. And again, that's any report within the system can come out in different format. I'd like to think I don't think I'm ever going to stop finance teams using Excel. I think it's just a natural inbuilt thing that you want to do. And I know that you're going to want to use Excel for different purposes, but you really don't need to, or you shouldn't need to. And I'd be very interested to know why. Once we get the system implemented for you and all of the reports set up, why you would need to manipulate any data in Excel. Because we're looking to try and eradicate that level of work. We want you to be able to just produce the reports in Sage Intacct, optionally send them to Excel if that's how we prefer to view them. But I would expect that you shouldn't need to manipulate them further. But again, if you wanted to PDF it, then you could. The options are there.
Brilliant, thank you. Wendy Beasley's asked, for the quote, does number of users include all budget holders and requisitioners? So in Sage Intacct for Education, we have obviously two types of users. We've got what we call business users. So they have full access to the system, can perform all manner of financial transactions. And then you've got employee users who can have read-only access. They can raise requisitions, and they can also raise requisitions and approve. So I think if you're interested in, I can provide some indicative costs there. But yeah, if you base it on the assumption that I would need the number of schools, the number of main, AKA business users and employee users, and that typically the employee users come in packs of 10, 50, or 100, just to give you an idea. Debbie Wright has asked, can you charge interest on overdue amounts in AR?
A very good question. I've just been thinking about that one there as you were talking, Stephen. My honest answer is I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think there's any standard functionality around that. I'd need to look into it for you. Is it Debbie? Sorry, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So Debbie, I'll look into that one for you. Sage Intacct has the ability to do a lot of credit control and debt chasing just built in to the system, but there is also a separate add-on available called Collections, and I'm wondering whether the Collections add-on might be able to do that and automatically calculate interest at a certain rate depending on how long that's been overdue. So leave it with me. I'll look into that for you. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Brilliant. Okay. Nina asks, if POs and invoices are approved online, is it easily trackable for audit purposes if we went paperless, for example?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, I'll try and show you a very quick example of that. If I go into a requisition as an example, we can see the history. So that this requisition was raised by John, it's then been converted to an order. But if I want to get into the approval history and see exactly who approved that and when, you can see it was myself, because I'm the PE department manager. Okay, the date that it was approved and any comments that I made along the way there. So yes, absolutely 100% auditable, all the attachments, all the approval history. But again, I think another great use there is just to have that collaborate tool. So if there is conversations being had around particular spend or anything that might have happened during the workflow, you're going to be able to capture that using the collaborate tool on the bottom of the screen there. So all auditable, it will all stay there. We've actually, just as a side note to this, been through a demo of this with a company called Assets, who I'm sure some of you have heard of, if not all of you. They do a lot of audits within the education sector, and they loved it. They've said they think it's fantastic. They can get everything they need. They were even asking if they could be set up as a read-only user to be able to do the audits and things like that within the system. So they were nice and happy. And the answer was yes, by the way, they can be. You can set your auditor up as a read-only user if you wanted to.
Paula is asking, do approval users add to the number of users needed to cost the package? So yeah, absolutely, Paula. So if you want me to provide you with some indicative costs, again, just think about number of schools, how many business users, so people that will need full access to the system, still manner of financial transactions you're going to need, and then how many employee users, so how many people are going to need to raise a requisition or raise a requisition and approve, or perhaps someone they might need read-only access. So yeah, two different levels of users there to think about. Maya has asked, can we have an out of office for PO approval, i.e. would it go to another designated person?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can set up substitute approvers. So that will need to be set up centrally. So with your user profile, you're allocated a substitute or a delegated approver, and then when you do switch your out of office on within the system, it will automatically reroute any approvals to that person. So yes, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Nina's asked, how are funds and trips managed in the system?
Yeah, so this one coming through just before this. So Nina, fund and trip are two of the dimensions available. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the ins and outs around that because there's lots of really great functionality around it that'll be difficult to explain in just a few seconds. But location, fund, trip, item, they're all dimensions, and fund is allocated to a transaction in exactly the same way that a trip would be. Okay, so you've got a trip, or sometimes called project / trips. It can be used for different capital projects as well, if relevant. But yeah, so you can use trips in a dimension code.
Excellent.
Same as funds. The funds, sorry, Nina, just to finish that, the funds are then grouped together. So you would group together the different funds into different restricted pots and unrestricted pots. That's how we can produce your SOFA report as well within the system.
So obviously, you just confirmed that 500 is enough.
5,000.
Sorry, 500. 5,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes. Yeah.
That's good. I'm pleased to know that. I know 5,000. I'd be amazed if you were importing more than 5,000 journals at a time. So no lines of a journal.
Awesome. And then Debbie has asked, is there anything to help with credit cards?
Well, yes, again, is the simple answer to that. So you can set credit card accounts up and you can process all of your transactions within the system. But if we're talking about maybe prepaid cards or credit cards, there are other kind of processes around that we could discuss. We actually partner with Web Expenses as well, who I know have got some credit card functionality within their kind of product as well. And Web Expenses will integrate with Sage Intacct. So if you've got users who are maybe spending for expense purposes on their credit card and you want that to be fed through, then we can look at something like that. But if it's simply spend being put through the system using a credit card, then again we can cover that off using the cash management application, which has got the ability to set up your credit cards, your current accounts, your savings accounts, all within there. And then you can see here we've got the credit card transaction functionality. Okay. Right. Again, maybe you want to explore a bit further because there's a few things around credit cards. I know there's a few kind of nuances around that might make it a bit more tricky, but okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you everyone for joining today. And thank you for your time.
Thanks everyone.